Hamas has been holding Israeli women as sex slaves in its dungeons for the past 7 months.
You do all these, you come up with these wild accusations and wild things that you say. And guess what, Eylon? The world isn't listening a second longer. The world doesn't care.
Joining me now is former Israeli government spokesman Eylon Levy and broadcaster and commentator Narinder Kaur, who says Britain and the UK have given Netanyahu the green light.
Completely given him the green light. We all know that, though. It's becoming a bit of a tired, repetitive argument that, do you condemn Hamas? It's becoming really tedious because what's happening in Gaza right now is an absolute disgrace. And it was always a disgrace from October the 7th onwards. It was always a disgrace what was going on there. But only now the world's waking up.
Narinder, hold that thought. We're going to speak to Eylon briefly about what is exactly going on the ground. Eylon, how are you?
I'm all right, apart from the fact we're still 7 months into a war and we still have 132 refugees who are still trapped in Gaza.
Overnight, we've seen that Biden has started to pause arms shipments to Israel. Is that not a bit of a warning sign about the strength of that alliance?
It's an incredibly disturbing step. What Israel needs right now is its Western allies to keep up pressure on Hamas to release the hostages, and just as importantly, to keep up pressure on Hezbollah, another Iranian proxy that has been firing rockets at northern Israel for 7 months now, forcing the evacuation of tens of thousands of people. We need our Western allies to make clear that we stand firm together in the face of Iranian.
Hold on, Narinder. I will bring you in a moment. But
how can you, Eylon? How on earth can you sit there and say, "Oh, we need our Western allies. We need their hostages"? Netanyahu he's just not agreed to the ceasefire. He's just said no to having the hostages released. And you're sat there saying, we need the hostages back. He's just failed in getting the hostages back. He just wants to go in and kill more. Whoa. What are you on about?
No, that's not true. There was
a framework.
It's not
true.
Let Eylon come back on that. That's quite a charge.
On the table. There was a framework on the table that would see Israel receive 33 live hostages back in exchange for a pause in the fighting. What Hamas did the other day was put a counteroffer in which it told Israel, we're not giving you back live hostages. We're going to give you 33 hostages, alive or dead. And as much as Israel is committed to getting all of those hostages back for a dignified burial so their families can have that closure, Israel is not going to be bought off at this stage with the corpses of the hostages Hamas has been.
You don't know that. I think I'd like to see evidence of you saying that. I don't think that's correct. The fact is Netanyahu did not agree to this.
That was the terms of the deal, dead or alive.
But we know that over 30 hostages.
So therefore, if it was dead or alive, you just want to go in and bombard Rafah. The only place that the hostages, children are sat there. The only place they've got nowhere else to run. Eylon, there's nowhere else to hide.
I would like to answer your question if you would like to get your guest under control. Israel has two goals in this war. First is to make sure that Hamas can never again perpetrate an atrocity like it did on October 7th, when it invaded and burned whole families alive, reduced them to human ash, and committed barbaric acts of gang rape, and disappeared back into the Gaza Strip with 253 hostages. Enough, that will not happen again. And the second is to get those poor hostages back, because we know that they are being starved and tortured and executed and raped in captivity. And we already have one survivor of Hamas captivity who has very bravely testified to the New York Times about how she was sexually abused and molested in captivity. And many of the other hostages have said the same. I mean, I'm tearing my hair out that people do not understand that right now, Hamas has been holding Israeli women as sex slaves in its dungeons for the past 7 months. And Israel is now putting military pressure on Hamas to release those hostages and will continue with its campaign to make sure that Hamas can never, ever perpetrate such barbaric atrocities ever again.
Eylon, you can continue these...
We're going to move on briefly. I promise I'll come back to you. Believe me, we're going to have this conversation. But I just want to talk to Eylon briefly about what the plan is in Rafah. What it is, what is the end game? Is this, the final act of what you imagine the war to be, or is this just opening another front in a seamlessly never-ending operation?
Well, the reason that we've reached Rafah right now is that over the last 7 months, the Israeli army has been able to destroy most of Hamas's terrorist machine. It started with 24 battalions. There are 4 now standing in Rafah. What it did the other day was a precise operation to take over the Rafah crossing. 1, the crossing through which Hamas has been smuggling weapons. 2, the crossing through which Hamas has been commandeering and hijacking humanitarian aid. And 3, here's the thing that really makes my blood boil. The area from which Hamas fired rockets at the Kerem Shalom humanitarian aid crossing, the main lifeline into Gaza from Israel, killing 4 Israeli soldiers. They were killed because Hamas started bombing the main humanitarian crossing into the Gaza Strip. And Israel has made clear that this war will end with Hamas removed from power and its military machine shattered. And that's why it's moving into Rafah.
What timescale would you put on the operation?
It's very difficult to tell. Israel is proceeding with caution because, in line with concerns of the international community, it wants to evacuate civilians from harm's way. That's why it designated an expanded humanitarian zone, which has field hospitals, which has tents purchased by the Israeli army, which has expanded access to food and water, because we don't want Hamas to be able to use civilians as human shields. Now, note when people tell Israel not to go into Rafah.
I honestly can't hold myself for a second longer with Eylon's lies.
Well, what's he like? You're saying they're not being used.
Eylon, I'd love to see this evidence. Eylon, you know, you've just
Harry, if you could get your guest under control, please.
No, Eylon, I'm not going to be under control.
Just let the man speak, and then you can come back.
No, you're not going to control me like you're trying to control Palestinians.
Let him speak.
You've spoken a long time.
You will have an equal right to come back. Let Eylon speak.
Those who are telling Israel not to go into Rafah are telling Hamas that it gets a free pass if it hides behind civilians. They're saying, don't go into Rafah because civilians will get hurt. But don't ask civilians to leave because then they will be displaced. And the message that that is sending to terrorists around the world who are taking notes is that if you hide behind enough civilians, you have immunity. And the army of a democratic state cannot come after you to stop you perpetrating more atrocities like you did on October 7th. Please,
hold that thought. You made some pretty incendiary allegations there that he was lying.
These are allegations. How are you sat there, Harry?
Well, what evidence do you have that they're not using?
All these allegations. I want to see evidence of these sex dungeons and all these things that you say, Eylon.
So you're saying you don't believe the women...
You go on telly, let me speak to Eylon. You go on telly, you do all these, you come up with these wild accusations and wild things that you say. And guess what, Eylon? The world isn't listening a second longer. The world doesn't care for your lies any longer.
You're saying,
shall I tell you what they care about? 30,000 people dead.
On a very simple point.
17,000 children made into orphans. Stop with your lies. We don't care.
Narinder, yes, you're saying that you do not believe women who have been rescued and said that hostages are being treated to rape and sexual assault. You don't believe them.
I'm saying that these kind of things are exaggerated so much. What I'm saying is, listen, should I tell you what I care about? The charred bodies of children that I'm seeing coming out on social media. I care about children being treated like dogs, eating animal feed. How dare Eylon sit there and say, oh, well, Hamas will just carry on. Guess what? Have you captured Hamas? Will you stop Hamas? Will you stop?
Well, how would you?
Will Israel stop their next generation?
Having a rant on your show.
Let the man speak. You've had more than your fair.
45 seconds.
Eylon, are you still there?
The United Nations, hardly my favorite source of information. Their rapporteur came to Israel and said there is clear and convincing evidence that hostages are being submitted to sexual torture and rape in Gaza right now. Brave Amit Sousa, one of the first hostages who was released in the first deal, very bravely told the New York Times, and you're welcome to read the article yourself, how she was molested in captivity. We have hostages who come out who report seeing women being sexually abused at gunpoint. It's worse than that. They say that Hamas is dressing up the women like dolls, doing whatever they want with them, and they're doing the same with the men. The only difference is the men can't get pregnant. The testimonies are even more chilling. We have survivors of Hamas captivity who are telling us that women are skipping their periods, and they can only hope that it's the body's response to not get pregnant rather than the horrific possibility that there are Israeli women in Gaza right now who are 7 months pregnant. And if anyone thinks that Israel is going to stop in its efforts to put military pressure on the terror organization that burned families alive on October 7th to get those hostages back, they are sorely mistaken and their moral compass is irrevocably broken.
Lorinda, I mean, pretty compelling evidence there. You disagreeing with the UN, the New York Times? Who are you disagreeing with?
Look, you can bring out evidence and stats all day long.
That's kind of the game we're in, right?
You can do that all day long. But actually, guess what? The world can actually see the facts for themselves. They can see what's really going on. And you know what? No one is sitting here defending what Hamas are doing. But at the end of the day, you are just breeding the next terrorist generation. And guess what? Tel Aviv are in protest. Let me finish. I haven't even had one word. He has not stopped. You don't stop, Eylon. The fact is, your own Israeli people in Tel Aviv are protesting themselves. The hostages...
It's a democracy. You can't protest in Gaza, can they?
Hostages' families themselves have gone to Netanyahu and said, accept this deal. You haven't accepted the deal because guess what? You don't actually care about the hostages. You do not care. You just want a genocide. You want ethnic cleansing.
Okay.
That's what you want. That's a fact.
Eylon, you're rolling your eyes.
It's a damn good thing that hostage families are protesting because in a democracy they should put every pressure they can on.
They're telling you to stop. They're saying enough's enough.
One at a time.
They want to get live hostages back first.
By killing 30,000 people. By killing 30,000. Doesn't make sense, Eylon.
You can come back in a second.
The math doesn't add up. The math doesn't add up.
Come on, you're shouting at each other.
And rape them further. The families are all committed to getting the dead hostages back for dignified burial, but you will not find one that will accept a deal for dead bodies to be returned in exchange for a pause to the military pressure on Hamas. And on that, Israeli society is united. We are going to get the hostages back, and we're going to prioritize the live ones because there is no time left for them.
Eylon, stay there for a sec. Lorinda, last word before we go to break.
There's no point arguing with somebody who just lies and just brings out, the world doesn't care anymore, honestly. The world cares about children. The world cares there's 17,000 orphans and they're feeding themselves on animal livestock. I mean, that's what people care about.